So, have you ever had one of those Tuesdays?
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
You know the kind I mean. It's like 3:0 p.m., your coffee is completely cold. You just replied, "You too," to the waiter who told you to enjoy your meal.
The absolute worst feeling.
It is. And you just sort of look around your life and think, I have made a terrible mistake. I am definitely in the wrong timeline.
Ah, right. The classic darkest timeline syndrome.
Right.
We have all been there.
Totally.
You trip over the cat or you delete the wrong spreadsheet and you just think, surely somewhere in the multiverse, there is a version of me accepting a Nobel Prize right now instead of, cleaning up this mess.
Exactly. And we joke about it constantly. We make memes about the multiverse and alternate timelines. But buckle up, because today we are looking at a document that suggests the Nobel Prize version of you isn't just a coping mechanism.
It's a very real probability.
Right. That version of you might actually be real,
Mm.
and even stranger, they might be trying to send you, like, a performance review.
It is a concept that completely rewires how we think about regret, about decision-making, and honestly, intuition. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the nature of reality itself
Specifically looking at probabilities, the paths not taken.
and the mechanics of how consciousness filters information like a cosmic radio.
It is a very specific vibe today for you guys listening. Think late-night campfire chat meets quantum physics graduate seminar.
But hopefully with a few more jokes than a physics seminar.
Definitely more jokes. We are analyzing a very specific historical record today. This is session 232 of the Early Sessions, Book 5 of the Seth Material.
Recorded way back on February 9, 1966.
Wednesday night, if I recall. But before we jump into the rabbit hole, and believe me, it is a deep one, we need to give a mandatory shout-out to the source. All the concepts we're unpacking today come directly from the Seth Material.
Which is published by the New Awareness Network.
Exactly.
And we always encourage you to go to the source directly. We're just the guides here, giving you the sort of Cliff's Notes version, but the books are the real deal. You should really study the Seth Material books yourself.
You can find them and visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore at sethcenter.com, the Early Sessions.
Highly recommended if you want to bypass our static and get the clear signal.
And just so everyone is on the same page, we need to declare that this deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
We aren't selling you a timeline jump.
Though, if I could, I might price it pretty high, depending on the destination.
I think a lot of people would pay top dollar for that ticket.
So let's lay out the mission for today's deep dive. We have two main courses on the menu. First, we're going to talk about the envelope experiment.
The remote viewing test.
Right. This is where Jane Roberts, the medium, describes a photo sealed in a double envelope. And she gets specific. I mean, down to the twist of a body and a man's exact age.
But there's a catch.
There is a catch. She makes a mistake that actually proves how the entire process works.
It is the error that reveals the mechanics. A perfect example of how the conscious mind interferes with psychic data.
And second, we are going to talk about the probable self. The version of you that didn't marry your ex or, did buy that Bitcoin in 2010.
The wealthy you.
The very wealthy you. According to Seth, that version of you is alive, and technically haunting you with data.
Haunting might be a bit of a dramatic word, but certainly communicating. There's a feedback loop there that we are going to dismantle today.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's set the scene for everyone. It's February 9, 1966. Jane Roberts, who goes by the entity name Rupert in these sessions, and her husband, Robert Butts, referred to as Joseph, are just sitting in their living room.
And we really have to remember the setting here. This isn't some mystical temple on a mountaintop. It's a regular apartment in Elmira, upstate New York.
Right.
They are dealing with mundane. In the actual notes for this session, Robert mentions that he has to get up and close the kitchen window because the traffic noise outside is getting too loud.
I love that detail so much. Here they are, contacting an energy personality essence no longer focused in physical reality. And they're like, hang on, Seth, a delivery truck is going by.
It grounds the experience completely. It reminds us that profound spiritual work happens in the gritty, real world. And actually, there is a lot of excitement in the air for them personally during this specific week in 1966.
Oh, yeah, the book deal stuff.
Right. Jane had just done something incredibly bold. She called a publisher, Frederick Fell, in New York City, and she read him some of her poetry right over the phone.
Which is just a terrifying prospect for any writer. Cold calling a New York publisher and reading poetry, that takes absolute nerves of steel.
And it worked. He liked it. And not only that, he asked to see the manuscript for the Seth Material, too. They are literally on the cusp of getting their big break.
They're talking about publicity tours, radio shows, the whole 9 yards.
So you have this really fascinating mix of cosmic wisdom and mundane book deal anxiety happening in the room at the exact same time.
It's very human. But Seth, the entity Jane is channeling, starts the session by addressing a glitch that happened a few days prior.
The unscheduled session.
Right. Apparently in the previous session, Jane gave some data about how long certain people were going to live, and it turned out to be wrong, or at least really muddy and confusing.
This is crucial for anyone interested in how channeling, or really intuition in general, works. Seth explains that it's all about frequencies. He actually says, quote, "It is extremely difficult to lock in here."
Like trying to tune an old AM radio during a thunderstorm.
Exactly like that. He describes it as a pulsation. The connection isn't a solid flat line like a modern fiber optic cable. It pulses. It vacillates.
Okay.
Seth explains that if the medium can't maintain that specific frequency, there's a slipping in and out. And when you slip, the medium's personal subconscious rushes in to fill the gap.
So the static isn't just silence. The static is actually your own brain making stuff up.
Precisely. It's like a radio falling between stations. You might hear a mix of the actual broadcast and some local interference. In that previous session, Jane's subconscious had its own fears or preconceived ideas about lifespans.
So when the connection to Seth slipped, her brain just autofilled the rest of the sentence.
Exactly. Her own anxieties bled into the transcript.
Man, that actually makes me feel a lot better about my own intuition. Sometimes I have a gut feeling and I think, is this a profound sign from the universe, or am I just hungry?
The hangry filter is a very real phenomenon.
It really is.
But Seth makes a really interesting point here about the physical effect of this process. We tend to think of channeling or deep meditation as mentally and physically draining. You know, you see those movies where the psychic collapses in a sweat after the reading.
Yeah, the heavy breathing, the nosebleeds, the whole Hollywood trope.
But Seth claims it's the exact opposite. He says the very act of receiving these high frequencies is quite literally healing for the physical body.
I found this part so fascinating. He mentions it lowers blood pressure and calms the nervous system.
Yes. The energy used to communicate isn't just for information transfer. It's a high vibration energy that repairs the physical organism. He even tells Robert Jane's husband that just witnessing the session and being in that immediate environment has a calming, healing effect on him too.
So sitting in on a channeling session is basically better than a spa day.
In terms of cellular repair, possibly. It's passive healing. Seth suggests that Robert's nervous system is benefiting just by sitting in the chair and taking notes.
I need to find a friend who channels so I can just sit in the corner of their living room and fix my bad knee.
It couldn't hurt. But this whole idea of frequencies and locking in is the perfect setup for the main topic of the night,
Multiverse view.
the probable self. This is the part of the session where things get incredibly dense. Seth starts talking about how we view reality versus how reality actually functions.
He uses a really accessible analogy about dreams to start us off, right?
He does. He says, imagine you dream of holding an apple. It's crisp, it's red, you can feel the physical weight of it in your hand, you can smell it. Then you wake up, the apple is gone.
Right. And we just say, oh, it was just a dream. We dismiss it completely.
But Seth argues that just because you aren't holding it in physical reality anymore doesn't mean the apple didn't exist. It had a concrete reality in that specific context. He says probable events are exactly the same way.
We just don't see them because we aren't focused on that frequency.
Exactly. But they are just as concrete as that dream apple.
He also throws in this wild comparison to our own bodies. He points out that the workings of any cell within your physical body would strike you as quite alien.
That's such a great perspective check. We walk around thinking we are the absolute masters of our domain, right? I am me. But we have zero conscious awareness of what our liver cells are doing right now.
None whatsoever.
They are fighting microscopic battles, processing toxins, dying, being born. They have their own kind of consciousness, their own perception of reality.
And we are totally oblivious to the whole drama.
Seth's point is this. If you are completely unaware of the life of your own physical cells, why is it so strange to be unaware of other parts of your complete self that exist in other dimensions? We are a hierarchy of consciousness.
It's a very humbling thought. We're basically a walking galaxy of cells we don't know, connected to a broader galaxy of cells we can't see.
And this is where we get to the mechanism of choice. This is the big aha moment of the session for me.
Okay, walk us through this slowly because it gets trippy. Let's set up a scenario. Say I have a choice of 3 actions for lunch. Let's keep it simple. Action A, I eat a healthy salad. Action B, I eat a massive greasy pizza. Action C, I skip lunch entirely and just drink 4 cups of black coffee.
A classic modern lunch dilemma. So in this physical reality, the one we are currently recording this deep dive in, you choose action A. You eat the salad.
Okay.
You experience the crunch, the taste, the digestion. You feel very virtuous.
Virtuous me. I like him. He makes good choices.
Right. But Seth says actions B and C, the pizza and the coffee starvation, are still experienced.
By who? The pizza me.
By a probable self. These are non-physical portions of your greater identity. They literally live out the reality of eating the pizza and skipping lunch. But here is the kicker. It's not just random multiversal chaos. There is a structured feedback loop.
A feedback loop between the realities.
Yes. Seth introduces the concept of the inner ego. This is a deeper part of your consciousness, sort of the overarching manager of all these different selves. And this inner ego observes the results of all 3 actions simultaneously.
Wait, so the inner ego has like a giant control room dashboard.
Essentially, yes. It sees physical you eating the salad. It watches the probable you eating the pizza and getting heartburn. It watches the other probable you jittering on caffeine and crashing at 4 p.m.
And it compares notes on all of them.
Exactly. It compares the results across the board. It looks at the biological outcome, the emotional outcome, the energetic outcome. And then, this is the really crucial part, it sends that aggregated data back to your physical subconscious.
So even though I didn't physically eat the pizza, my subconscious gets a detailed report on how the pizza would have felt.
Yes. Seth says this information is used as an aid in making future decisions. We actually learn from mistakes we didn't even physically make in this timeline.
That is absolutely wild. So if I suddenly have a really strong intuition not to do something, like not to take a certain road home, it might be because a probable me already took that road and it went terribly.
That's the direct implication. We are constantly downloading data from our probable selves. Seth states very clearly that there is a constant subconscious interchange of information between these portions of the self.
You know, this completely changes how I feel about regret.
How so?
Well, we usually think of regret as this useless, heavy emotion. You sit there thinking, oh, I should have taken that job in Chicago 10 years ago. But maybe that nagging feeling isn't actually regret at all. Maybe it's just the data connection.
Like lead through.
Right. Maybe the Chicago me is having a really hard time, and I'm just picking up on the static of his stress.
Or perhaps the Chicago me is having a fantastic time, and that quote-unquote regret is actually a bleed-through of their joy and success, which your physically focused brain misinterprets as a feeling of missing out.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
But Seth emphasizes that this feedback loop is strictly designed to help the current physical you navigate your reality better. It's a massive evolutionary advantage to have multiple selves testing the waters of probability before you commit physical energy to a direction.
It's like crowdsourcing your life choices, but the crowd is just entirely made up of other versions of you.
And Seth mentions that this probable self has its own memory and identity, very similar to the dreaming self. He suggests that if you really want to understand time and probability, you should look at how time functions in your dreams.
Because it's not linear.
Right. In dreams, past, present, and future often blend together seamlessly. That's how the probable system operates outside of our physical time constraints.
It's a lot to take in. It means we are never really alone in our heads, and we are never really making a decision in a total vacuum. We're part of a massive, multi-dimensional data processing team.
A massive data processing team is a brilliant way to put it. And remember the context here. This was 1966. The term multiverse wasn't plastered all over pop culture and superhero movies like it is today.
Not at all.
Seth was laying out a highly complex system of psychological feedback loops that we are only just beginning to have the cultural vocabulary to even describe.
It really was ahead of its time. Speaking of data processing, though, let's shift gears to the practical demonstration of this theory. We've got the high-level concept that consciousness can access information from other places and times. Now we have the physical practice, the envelope experiment.
This is genuinely one of my favorite parts of the early sessions. It's so tangible. It's not just abstract philosophy, it's a verifiable test.
For those tuning in who don't know the setup, Robert Buds would regularly conduct these remote viewing tests to see if Seth, speaking through Jane, could accurately see what was hidden inside a completely sealed envelope.
And not just any flimsy envelope. Robert was incredibly rigorous about his methodology. He would place a target object or a photo between 2 thick pieces of cardboard Bristol board, specifically, and then seal that entire package inside a double envelope.
So there was absolutely zero way to see through it by holding it up to the light or anything.
Impossible. It was completely opaque.
In this specific session, session 232, the target was a black and white Polaroid photo from 1960.
Right. It was an old picture of Robert at his former job at the artistic card company. He's just sitting at his desk. It's a totally candid shot. A friend of his just caught him by surprise with a camera during their lunch hour.
And the specific details of the photo are very important for the test. In the picture, Robert is stretching. He's yawning with his arms up in the air. And in the background behind him, there is an older gentleman named Ezra Havens.
So Jane goes into her trance state. She takes the sealed envelope and holds it against her forehead, and she starts receiving and relaying impressions of the target.
Let's go through the hits first, because some of them are just incredibly specific. First off, she mentions, quote, something circular.
Robert identifies this immediately upon opening it later. In the photo, sitting right there on the desk, is a round ink bottle and a mixing tray with 4 distinct circular wells. That's a direct geometric hit.
Then she says she sees, quote, a twist, or something twisted.
This is an interesting one. At first, while in trance, Jane's conscious mind tries to interpret the raw signal, and she thinks of a dancing motion.
Her brain trying to make sense of the shape.
Exactly. But Seth later clarifies that this was actually the body motion of Robert stretching and twisting in his desk chair when he was startled by the camera flash.
Okay, then we get to the numbers. Jane distinctly hears the words 5, 6.
Now, in the physical photo, there is a serial number stamped on the back. But much more importantly, Ezra Havens, the older man standing in the background, was exactly 56 years old when that specific photo was taken in 1960.
And it's interesting because Jane actually says 5, 6. She pauses. She doesn't say 56.
Which is incredibly common in remote viewing protocols. The viewer often gets the raw data, the individual digits, before their analytical brain can combine them into a coherent concept like a person's age.
Right.
It proves she was accessing the raw informational frequency, not just guessing a narrative story about a man.
Okay, now here is where it gets really, really interesting. The white table incident. Jane says she sees a white table.
In the target photo, Robert is sitting at a large drafting table that is completely covered in bright white paper. So visually, from a remote viewing standpoint, it is a white table.
But Jane gets confused while relaying this. She actually hesitates.
Right. Seth comes in and explains this exact hesitation later in the session. He says he gave Jane the clear image of the white table from the 1960 photo. But Jane's conscious mind, or her subconscious filter, immediately flashed to their own coffee table sitting right there in their apartment.
Which is also white.
Exactly.
So she thought, wait a minute, I'm just seeing our own furniture. They can't possibly be right. I'm making this up.
Exactly what happened. Her logical, analytical mind kicked in and essentially said, that's erroneous data, Jane. You're just looking at your own living room with your mind's eye. So when she spoke the impression out loud, she hesitated. She described a table, but intentionally left out the word white because she didn't want to be wrong.
But she actually was right. The table in the photo was white.
This perfectly illustrates the filtering problem Seth talked about in the very first segment regarding the radio static. The signal from Seth was perfect. The receiver, Jane, doubted the signal because it looked too familiar to her current physical reality, so she actively edited it.
That is such a deeply human mistake. We always think, oh, it can't be that simple. I must be doing it wrong.
It shows that the absolute hardest part of intuition isn't receiving the signal itself, it's trusting the signal without analyzing it to death. The analysis phase is always where the error creeps in.
And then we have the spookiest part of the whole experiment, the unknown element.
This is fascinating. Jane senses an unknown element directly connected to the man in the background, Ezra. She says she sees a mine or an underground area with rocky sides.
She specifically and repeatedly mentions being underground.
Now, context again. At the time of the session in 1966, Ezra Havens had already been dead for about 2 years. He died of a sudden heart attack in 1964.
And Seth confirms that the, quote, unknown element she was picking up on referred directly to his death. But what about the mine? Was Ezra a coal miner at some point?
No, not at all. And this is another brilliant example of a subconscious glitch. Seth explains that Jane was actually perceiving a grave. She was perceiving the conceptual reality of being 6 feet under, the earth, the rocks, the burial process. But Seth points out that Jane has a very strong personal psychological block. She intensely dislikes graves. She refuses to think about them or talk about them.
So her subconscious literally censored the word grave as the data was coming through.
And instantly replaced it with the closest safe alternative it could find in her vocabulary, which was a mine.
That is incredible. It's like an internal PR department scrubbing all the scary words out of the script before she reads it on air.
It perfectly illustrates the mechanical reality of channeling. Seth sends the pure concept, underground burial. Jane's brain receives the frequency, hits a massive trauma or fear block, and immediately reroutes the signal to underground mine.
So the raw data of being underground and rocky was 100% accurate. But her personal label was wrong.
Exactly.
It really makes you wonder how much of our own daily intuition we misinterpret simply because we're afraid of the real answer.
That is the big question this session poses. Seth is constantly telling them, and by extension, telling us, that we absolutely need to know ourselves. We need to know our own beliefs and our own fears, because those beliefs are the literal filter through which we receive all reality.
Right, if your filter is dirty, the water comes out muddy.
Or if you have specific fears, the picture is going to be distorted to protect you from that fear.
Speaking of distortions, Seth wraps up the envelope experiment by clarifying a few final things. He clarifies the twist. Jane thought it was a dancing motion, and Seth says, no, it was just the body motion of stretching.
And he clears up the 5-6 confusion definitively. He confirms it was absolutely the man's age in the background. It really is an impressive level of accuracy for a Polaroid hidden inside thick cardboard.
It really is. It validates the whole premise of the session, that consciousness is not bound by physical space or linear time. Jane could essentially see into a sealed envelope sitting on her lap and simultaneously see back in time to an office in 1960.
And connect with the, quote, imminent death of the subject, even though imminent in Seth's non-physical perception of time actually meant 4 years later in physical reality.
Yeah, that was a funny little side note in the transcript.
Yeah.
Seth called the heart attack imminent in 1960, even though the guy didn't die until 1964.
Time is incredibly flexible for an entity like Seth. 4 years is just a blink of an eye when you're viewing the timeline from entirely outside the physical system.
So towards the very end of the session, Seth shifts gears back to some really practical advice for Robert. He starts talking about practical magic and the use of suggestion.
He strongly encourages Robert to use mental suggestion to improve his painting and his financial situation. Robert was a working artist, and like a lot of artists, he worried constantly about money.
And Seth says something very encouraging here. He tells Robert, your fortunes are taking a turn for the better. But the turn, however, is a result of development on your parts.
I love that specific phrasing. It's not just, oh, hey, good luck is randomly coming your way from the universe. It's a direct acknowledgement. You have developed your consciousness to a level where physical things are naturally shifting to match it.
It puts the power entirely back in their hands. It's not just random fate or luck.
Exactly. And it ties right back to the whole probability discussion we had earlier. By doing the work, the weekly channeling sessions, the conscious suggestions, the mental focus, they are actively aligning themselves with a probable self that is already successful and abundant.
They are literally tuning the radio dial away from the struggling artist station and over to the successful author station.
And that new station includes physical healing, apparently. Seth mentions again at the very end of the night that conducting the sessions is actively lowering Robert's blood pressure and calming his nervous system down.
It really is a holistic system when you look at it. The mind, the physical body, the vast network of probable selves, the subconscious feedback loops, it's all just one giant interconnected web of data.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this today? We aren't doing rigorous envelope experiments in our living rooms, probably, and most of us aren't channeling full-length metaphysical books.
I think the biggest practical takeaway for us is about managing the static versus the signal.
How so?
Well, we live in a world of just incredible noise. Constant traffic, social media feeds, 24-hour news cycles, and our own internal anxieties.
Yeah.
Seth is basically teaching us that there's a profound, accurate source of information available to us.
From our deep subconscious and from our probable selves.
Right. But we have to handle the tuning mechanism very carefully to access it.
We have to get up and close the kitchen windows, so to speak.
Exactly. We have to actively quiet the external noise. And more importantly, we have to become deeply aware of our own internal filters.
Because if we are subconsciously afraid of something, just like Jane was terrified of graves, we will inevitably misinterpret the pure signals we are getting.
And we also have to realize that our physical choices matter deeply, but also the choices we don't make matter too.
Yes. We are constantly learning and evolving from the roads not taken. I think that should give all of us a profound sense of peace. You haven't actually lost those other potential lives.
You're just living them elsewhere.
You are effectively living them in a distributed, multidimensional way, and the hard-earned wisdom from those alternate choices is entirely accessible to you right now if you just learn to listen.
That really is a comforting thought. The circus performer version of me is out there right now, falling off a trapeze over and over so that I can sit here comfortably in this podcasting chair and know not to run away and join the circus.
Thank you for your vital service, Circus You.
Seriously, we owe them a lot. So here's a final provocative thought to leave you with today as you go about your week. If we really do constantly download data from our probable selves, does that mean when you have a sudden, totally inexplicable urge to do something wildly out of character, like move to a new country or dye your hair blue, it's because of probable you just tried it in another timeline and it was absolutely amazing?
Or, on the flip side, are you, the current test subject, about to make a wild leap just to send the failure data back to the collective inner ego?
Oh man, do not put that kind of pressure on me.
Just keep your frequency clear and trust the signal.
If you want to dive deeper into all of this, and believe me, we barely scratch the surface of what the inner ego actually does, you need to get your hands on the source books.
Please visit sethcenter.com/early-sessions. The New Awareness Network has beautifully preserved all this original material. Go read session 232 in its entirety. It is more than worth your time.
And remember, this specific deep dive is just one single probability. Somewhere out there, in another timeline, we actually sang this entire analysis as a Broadway rock opera.
I think I strongly prefer being in this timeline then.
Agreed. The static on that station would be terrible. Thanks for listening, anyone.
Goodbye.
Catch you in the next probability.